All right, so what's going on, guys? So I was supposed to fly out tonight for an engagement, and unfortunately, my flight got canceled last minute. In fact, it was canceled a couple hours ago, and I had an 8 p.m. flight, and I had this big thing that I was planning with a couple of other people for this engagement we had in front of other people, and so it was a big thing in a sense. But unfortunately, we had to push it out at a later date, and so I was just trying to reorient myself and just kind of get around that. And one of the things that the person I was on the phone with was saying was that, man, it was God's will that this happened. And I could have sat there and I could have said, you know what, I should have prayed harder. I should have prayed more. I should have gotten an earlier flight, knowing that this snowstorm that's sweeping through the Midwest and the Northeast of the U.S., I could have planned ahead and I could have done better. I should have left last night, or I could have done this and that. And I didn't think those things. And instead, what I was reminded of was that in all circumstances, right, whether it works out for, our good, whether it's a suffering or a roadblock or something that seemingly isn't going our way, it's the Lord's will. And oftentimes that suffering is just God's love for us and in redirecting our path to something else. And in Psalms 37, it says that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. And a lot of us right now, we look at our situations, whether we're going through a breakup, a divorce, whether we're going through a job loss. Maybe you didn't get the job because you interviewed and you did all these different things. You didn't get into the school that you wanted. Maybe the decision and the action that you took led to an argument, a mishap with your friend or family member. You got kicked out of your church or a class or whatever it is, right? And we could always look at that situation in regret. We could always look at that and say, man, I could have done this. I should have done that. I could have said something different. And even Joseph in the Bible, with all the things that he went through, he could have said to himself, man, I should have been nicer to my brothers so that they wouldn't have sold me to Egyptians and gone to Egypt. I shouldn't have been in that room with Potiphar's wife so that I would have been thrown in jail. I should have done this. I should have done that. But yet God, he knew exactly where Joseph was. He knew exactly where I was, my plan, my life. He knew exactly where you were in your divorce, in your breakup, in your job loss, in your suffering, in your argument, in all of the things that God had put you in. But you got to realize that oftentimes his sovereignty, his will was to allow you to go through that so that he could redirect you, so that he can give you a alternative. And who knows, maybe I could have died in a plane crash in the snowstorm if I were to have gotten on this plane, or I could have, whatever the alternative circumstances. I'm not here fretting, what could have and what should have, coulda, woulda type of thing, right? But instead, I'm taking joy that God has allowed me to be in this circumstance. And I'm going to live tomorrow and I'm going to say, Father, you allowed me to breathe this air in this room with my current circumstance and without having to see this person or that engagement, whatever it is that I had to do, right? And so a lot of us, we don't realize it, but God has us right where he wants us. And what we have to do, though, is to trust him, that as long as we live in his presence, that we lean into him, all the things that happen to us, whether we have the right even, or we think we have the right to complain, to be upset, to regret, to say, oh, we could have done this, we should have done that, and complain about it. Instead of doing that, we could look at that as God's sovereignty. We could look at that as God's love, his grace upon our life. And so his steps for our life, it's ordered by him, as Psalm 37 says. And so he delights in our way. So what we have to do is just trust him. We don't have to fret. We don't have to regret. We don't have to complain. We don't have to think that we should have done something better in that circumstance, in that moment, but really allow God to work, because he has something better for you. If he didn't allow you to go through with that marriage or that girlfriend or that job, and instead he had you rejected, he had you turn from that path to something else, we could see it as God's sovereignty in our lives, that he has something better for us and he has something different for us. So be encouraged, guys. Whatever's happening now, don't think of it as a punishment, as a suffering, as something that we did something wrong. oftentimes it could just be that God is redirecting us to something even better. So be encouraged, guys. God bless you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.